Remaking a video game is hard. There have been many examples in the past of remakes that have won over their communities, and others that just didn't. Silent Hill 2 is an original that won the hearts of gamers back in 2001, the long yet fairly confusing story of James Sunderland looking for his wife Mary in a small town called Silent Hill. This game takes James and the player through a series of trauma-filled scenarios, heart-racing scenes, and just an atmosphere that you won't find in many video games, especially in modern day. Today, I want to spend this video talking about the story of Silent Hill 2's remake, whilst also giving you a little insight into what the game's like. This game for me is one of the best psychological horrors that I've ever played. It gripped me from the very start, and I honestly have nothing bad to say about the whole experience the entire way through. For £60 in the UK, you can get a standard 14-hour plus storyline with no filler content, nothing that makes you stray away from the story itself, and everything that goes on is for you to get to the next stage of the game. Every puzzle that you do, every item you collect has a meaning and a purpose to progress and add to the story. This, granted it's a remake, is the way to make a horror video game. You don't get video games like this in modern day, granted it being a remake from 2001. And unless it's another remake or a game from a renowned company that's done it many times before, such as Naughty Dog, Rockstar or Santa Monica Studios, I would urge everyone watching this video to buy this game or play it or experience it at least once. Play it through and just enjoy and appreciate how this game makes you feel. It does its job perfectly. It doesn't just try to scare you with jump scares, and I'm so glad that it doesn't do that. It doesn't just make your heart race and make you not want to play through the next section of the game because of how scary it is. But what it does is make you wonder. It makes you want to know what's through that next door, what's round that corner, what's in that cell, what's at the end of that dark corridor. The sound effects, the music, the audio engineering is absolutely outstanding in this game, and it is, I would say, one of the best I've heard and experienced in a video game. Walking through those dark corridors, into those dark rooms, and down those long hallways looting for my next fight was some of the best and most intense feelings I've ever experienced in a video game. But at the end of this video, I'll give you my review along with a chance for you to win a giveaway copy of Silent Hill 2's remake on any platform of your choice, so make sure you stick around to the end of the video for that one. But everyone, grab yourself a drink and maybe a snack too, and let's dive straight into the storyline of Silent Hill 2.
Could you really be in this town?
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday. But you never did. Well, I'm alone there now. In our special place. Waiting for you.
I got a letter. The name on the envelope said Mary. My wife's name. It's ridiculous. Couldn't possibly be true. That's what I keep telling myself. Mary died of that damn disease 3 years ago. So then why am I looking for her? Our special place. What could she mean? This whole town was our special place. Could Mary really be here? Is she really alive? Waiting for me?
Silent Hill 2 is one of the most beloved and iconic survival horror games of all time. Praised for its deep psychological horror, complex narrative, and emotionally charged storytelling. The game, developed by Team Silent and released by Konami in 2001 for the PlayStation 2, that was the original, and of course, released by Konami again as the remake in 2024, it centres around the story of a man called James Sunderland, a man who is drawn to the eerie town of Silent Hill after receiving a mysterious letter from his deceased wife. Now, these story explains usually go a little bit differently on the channel, but because of the length of this game, because the game was predominantly about doing these puzzles and then progressing the story into different sections, I felt like it was appropriate to change the way, the formula that we do this video in particular. So down below there will be chapters in the timestamps. Each one of those chapters will go through the different areas of the campaign, characters, scenarios, different things and reasonings for it and what happened. And I feel like that's the most appropriate way for people to understand exactly what's happening within Silent Hill 2 and why the game is laid out in the way that it is and actually fully explaining the story. Chapter 1. The Letter.
This town, there's something wrong with it?
So the Silent Hill 2 story begins with James Sunderland arriving at the outskirts of Silent Hill, the small town. A fog-covered, abandoned town. But the fact that the letter came from Mary, his wife, seemed impossible. Mary died after a long battle with a terminal illness, almost 3 years ago from this point. Confused, grieving, and haunted by the possibility that she might somehow be alive, James travelled to Silent Hill in search of answers. Silent Hill is a chilling, fog-shrouded place that seems to exist outside the realm of normal reality. Its dense mist, crumbling buildings, and abandoned streets set the tone for the unsettling experience to come. James isn't just walking into a town, he's walking into a reflection of his own mind, shaped by guilt and repressed trauma. Chapter 2: The Town of Silent Hill, a Personal Nightmare. Silent Hill itself plays a crucial role in the story. The town seems to exist in a sort of purgatory, where it takes on different forms based on the psychological state of those who enter it. Silent Hill focuses on themes of guilt, repression, and personal torment, with the towns manifesting James's inner struggles. As he progresses through Silent Hill, the monsters, the environment, and the characters he encounters reflect his tortured psyche. Shortly after arriving in Silent Hill, James meets two other souls in this town. Angela Orozco is a nervous, emotionally fragile young woman searching for her mother. There's something off about her from the very beginning when we meet. She speaks in a vague and haunted way, hinting at her own suffering. Later on in the story, we learn that Angela's trauma is tied to a deeply abusive past involving her father. But for now, she remains fairly cryptic. Eddie Dombrowski, however, is a man struggling with feelings of inadequacy and anger. Initially, Eddie tries to laugh off the eerie happenings of Silent Hill, but there's a dark side to Eddie that becomes more apparent as the game progresses. His encounter with the town's monsters hint at violent tendencies and a troubled history. Both Angela and Eddie, like James, are dealing with their own inner demons. Silent Hill reflects their inner worlds, just as it does for James. These characters aren't here just by coincidence. Silent Hill has summoned them to confront their worst fears and traumas. Silent Hill isn't the same for everyone, and I think we're grasping this going through this explanation of the story. So what James can see in terms of these monsters roaming around Silent Hill, they're not going to be seen by the likes of Angela or Eddie. They're going to have their own monsters, their own things that they encounter, which is also the same. In this scene right here, for example, when we meet with Angela at a later point in the game, she becomes scared looking at something in the distance that James can't see. James and the player, us, have no idea what she's looking at, but she is very uncomfortable and very scared. And this proves the point that we and James are unable to see her version of Silent Hill like she isn't able to see ours.
Angela? Are you alright? Angela?
No. Please. You shouldn't be here.
Angela, it's okay.
No, don't touch me!
In his search for Mary, James meets a woman named Maria in the town. Maria looks almost identical to Mary, but behaves very, very differently. She's flirtatious, confident, and provocative, qualities Mary lacked due to her illness. Maria quickly attached herself to James, claiming that she needed his protection. This raises many questions. Is Maria a figment of James's imagination, a manifestation of his desires or guilt? Or could she somehow be connected to the supernatural forces of Silent Hill? Maria's existence is one of the central mysteries of the game. Throughout the story, she is killed in multiple different ways and at multiple times by the monsters of Silent Hill, only to reappear again, unharmed and confused. She represents an idealized version of Mary that James has conjured out of his deep guilt and desires. Maria reflects James' inner conflict. Part of him wishes to reunite with his wife, but the other part seeks to escape the pain of her illness by creating an ideal, more seductive version of her. Silent Hill is filled with horrifying creatures, and each one is a manifestation of James's repressed emotions and guilt. The monsters in the remake are grotesque, updated with terrifying new details that only enhance their symbolic nature. The lying figures are monstrous humanoids wrapped in straitjacket-like flesh, spewing acid from their bodies. They represent Mary's illness and suffering, confined by her deteriorating body, and James's emotional distance. The nurses we see throughout the game in Silent Hill are sexualized, faceless women in tight uniforms who move erratically and wield weapons. These creatures represent James's sexual frustrations and guilt over his wife's illness, and they haunt hospital locations tied to Mary's final days. And of course, Pyramid Head, one of the most iconic figures in the game. A towering, brutal executioner with a massive, blood-stained helmet and a gigantic knife. Pyramid Head stalks James relentlessly throughout his journey, and seeing him for the first time and hiding in that closet will be one of the most tense moments that I'll remember for a long time. But he represented James's subconscious desire for punishment. He is both judge and executioner, a reflection of the guilt that James is too afraid to face directly. Each creature that James encounters is a reflection of his internal torment, whether it's guilt, shame, or unspoken desires. Indeed, the monsters, bosses, and dungeons you must defeat are the different aspects of James's darkness, but the human characters are also different aspects of James and his relationships. For example, Eddie is James's addiction and represents the side of himself able to kill himself, Mary, or others that might get in the way of his pain. Angela represents the core of Mary's innocence. This is the aspect of his wife that needed him, his love, his protection, and her traumatic upbringing. Mary was likely abused or hurt by male members of her family. Maria, however, is what his immature self wished Mary was. Beautiful, confident, strong. She has none of the traits that James came to resent in Mary, and has all of the ones he feels entitled to. The final person we haven't touched upon yet, but is also a key character and very close relation to Mary, is Laura. Laura is a child, and throughout the story we kind of see little bits of her, little snippets and glimpses, up until around the final third of the game, where then we start talking to her more. It's at the start of the game where she mentions Mary's name, and James, of course, at that point, was interested and wanted to know how she knew Mary. The rest of the game with this was essentially trying to chase down Laura to ask her more questions, but James, of course, would usually just get frustrated with the answers and cause her to run away again. But Laura knew Mary. Laura was friends with Mary. And it wasn't until James knew this, until Laura told James what Mary was like, that they knew each other, that her birthday was a week ago, and yet Laura spoke to Mary then. This is all of the psychological stuff that goes on, which makes this game so fantastic, because piecing it together can be very difficult. But Laura is the childhood innocence of Mary, and she represents her inner child as well. Another part that needed James's protection, and Mary's as well. Neither of them were able to live up to Laura's needs, but Mary tried to nurture their inner child, whilst James ignored it. As James progressed through Silent Hill, the truth behind Mary's death slowly unravels. It becomes very clear that the death wasn't just a natural coincidence of her illness, but something much darker. After years of caring for Mary while she suffered from her terminal condition, James grew resentful and emotionally distant. Mary's illness had caused her great pain, both physically and emotionally, and her worsening condition had put a strain on their marriage. She became bitter and angry, and James became frustrated with the long, drawn-out suffering. In the climactic moments of the game, James is forced to confront the truth that he killed Mary. James suffocated his wife in a moment of weakness, unable to bear the pain of watching her suffer any longer. James had buried this truth deep within his mind, convincing himself that Mary died naturally. The letter he received was not from Mary, but a manifestation of his own guilt, drawing him back to Silent Hill to face what he had done. The entire town, its fog, its creatures, its twisted realities, was built from James's psyche, a personal hell designed to force him to confront his darkest secret. Most people simplify it down to James killed his wife, but that's not really what happened, and it's not really the story that Silent Hill 2 is trying to tell. Yes, James killed Mary, but he didn't do it for one particular reason. It was a multitude of reasons and justifications. James felt abused by Mary's behaviour towards him, and the treatment that she gave to him was just not what he needed or wanted. Just listen to her admitting this herself towards the end of the game.
When I first learned I was gonna die, I couldn't accept it. I was so angry. I struck out at everyone I loved. Especially you. And that's why I understand if you hate me. But I want you to know, I will always love you.
It's not a black and white James is bad or Mary is bad. Their relationship broke down under immense and unfair strain as the result of a terminal illness. It's tragic, honest, and painful. There was so much left unsaid between the two of them for real reasons. It wasn't just communicate better. James couldn't be honest about how he felt without feeling as if he'd put himself before his dying wife. And Mary couldn't properly ever put it into words how knowing you will die shortly feels. Knowing it will break your husband's heart, but desperate to not be alone in your final moments. I think that's why Silent Hill 2 is such an enduring classic. It isn't just James, it's Mary and how little we know about her, and how much we can infer from her letter, videotapes, and James's descriptions. James resented and neglected Mary during her illness, as he wanted a more sexual, confident, healthier partner, but was too much of a coward to end the relationship, as he felt compelled to be with her through that tough time. James ends up killing Mary, but makes it look natural. The letter from Mary is given to James by the nurse after Mary's death. Mary feels like once she dies of the disease, she will be going to her version of heaven, which is the Silent Hill that she knew and loved with James. which is exactly where we ended up at the end of the game, the hotel, where their love was the strongest. And that's where she planned to see him again there. The letter devastates James, racked him with guilt. He turns to alcohol and addiction. 3 years after Mary's death, James hangs himself. As James's story comes into focus, the fate of Angela and Eddie also reaches their tragic conclusions. Angela eventually succumbs to her despair. She views the world as a place of constant suffering, where everyone deserves to be punished. In one of the game's most disturbing moments, Angela, now in an Inferno-like version of Silent Hill, asks James, "For me, it's always like this." She ultimately walks into the flames, implying that she either dies by suicide or is consumed by her torment. Eddie spirals into madness and becomes increasingly violent. After a confrontation where Eddie admits to killing people for taunting him, he attacks James, leading to a battle where James is forced to kill Eddie in self-defense. Eddie's story highlights the theme of how people deal with guilt and resentment, contrasting with James's more introspective guilt. Silent Hill 2 has multiple endings, each reflecting different outcomes based on how James deals with his guilt. The endings are determined by subtle actions the player takes throughout the game, such as how much they focus on Mary's letter or how much attention they give to Maria. The first ending is the one that I got, and that is the leave ending. In this ending, James accepts the truth of what he's done. He reads a final letter from Mary, in which she expresses forgiveness and tells him to live his life. James leaves Silent Hill with Laura, potentially seeking a path of redemption and healing. The second ending is the Maria ending. In this ending, James rejects the memory of Mary and chooses to be with Maria, who appears again in the final moments. However, as they leave Silent Hill, Maria begins coughing, an ominous hint that she may suffer from the same illness as Mary, suggesting that James is doomed to repeat the cycle of guilt and suffering. The next one is the In Water ending. This dark ending suggests that James is unable to live with his guilt. After confronting the truth, he drives his car into the lake, committing suicide. The ending reflects the idea that James believes death is the only way to atone for his sins. And finally, the Rebirth ending. In this secret ending, James seeks to use occult powers found in Silent Hill to resurrect Mary. This ending taps into the Silent Hill's mystical and supernatural elements, implying that James may continue down a dark, obsessive path. Silent Hill 2 stands as a masterpiece of psychological horror, with its layered storytelling and deep exploration of the human psyche. James Sunderland's journey throughout Silent Hill is a harrowing tale of guilt, loss, and the struggle for redemption. The game forces players to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of love, death, and personal responsibility, making it a haunting experience that resonates long after the final credits roll. But guys, that is going to be it for the explanation for Silent Hill 2's story. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Again, this is a very different format to what we usually do on the channel, so if you prefer this one to the other ones, or prefer the other ones, then of course let me know down below for the viewers that come back and watch. But let me know your thoughts and opinions down below of this remake, if this is your first time playing it, or if it is you've played the original and now you're coming back to play the remake. Let me know what you think about it. This is the first time I've ever played Silent Hill 2, so for me, masterpiece, loved every minute of it. But comment down below Mary if you want to be in for a chance to be selected for a copy of Silent Hill 2 on any platform of your choice, if you got this far into the video as well, it lets me know who's watched all the way through, so make sure you leave that down below. But I really appreciate everyone watching. Let me know if this is the format you want going forward, and of course we do this story explain stuff on the channel all the time for pretty much any game that comes out that I take an interest to and that you guys like as well. There'll be a story explained on the channel going into it in more detail, so stick around for that if you're interested in that. Subscribe to the channel, and yeah, you won't be disappointed. But I hope you have enjoyed, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Speak to you guys next time.